If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
You are listening to Mindshock True Crime. This is the Delphi Murders case series. This is episode 31, The Hitchhiker. We'll be taking a look at a mysterious hitchhiker that some believe is actually the key to solving this case. As always, if you enjoy the Mindshock podcast, find it interesting and informative, want to help support Mindshock, help us get more mind-shocking content out there to keep up awareness in unsolved cases, missing persons cases, wrongful convictions, and more, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to allow your device to have those notifications come through. Like and share. Get the word out there. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind. Leave them in the comment section. So before we get into the hitchhiker issues, I will address all of the new information in the case. The leaked police interview with the Kleins. We'll be going back to the Kleins. Now, the stuff we're going to go over with the hitchhiker may or may not involve the Kleins or people known to the Kleins if there is a ring operating in the area. So there might be some overlapping information, but I wanted to go over this because a few people have been asking about it, and it's something I wanted to go over early on before all of the Klein releases anyway. Perhaps it will shed light on some issues and some reports. Before we get into that, I will read this very interesting post on the YouTube comments by Margaret with some interesting thoughts just to take a step back. So here's the post here. It slowly creeped in after watching older videos 3 years after the fact. A, why did or have creators thought that far outside the box compared to press releases? Seemed odd. Why had initial arrests and suspects had lesser sex crimes and almost always drug crimes? Seems odd. Why weren't most suspects of a serial rapist murderer type? Seems odd. It took a while to sink in that this beautiful scenic area could also unfortunately have a corner hotspot for drugs and such. Never mind, did Ron Logan know? Maybe yes, maybe no. Did DM know or worry about? Did they both worry or not concerned? Business as usual. Only Ron Logan not giving up his property line for someone else's dreams or desires. But as far as anyone knows, they could have been equally satisfied with the progress being made. Who knows? And if Ron Logan was busy at the dump and buying tropical fish that day, who were the 3 unidentified old men meeting inside the abandoned CPS building earlier in the day? Now, I haven't been able to nail this down, so some of the Mindshock listeners out there, I don't know where this report came from, but just continuing this comment here, apparently a witness saw them but didn't know them or didn't know all of them. Some have speculated if it could have been DM or Ron Logan and one other person. And there are maps of the trails inside, ? Don't quote, only read. Or are these unidentified persons still from earlier on in the day? There are also religious affiliated gangs that do weird stuff, black magic, to gain power and strength. Candles, skulls will actually rob graves to obtain them. Military graves are believed to contain better or stronger powers. This does not fit. However, just this week, someone made a video, 30-second clip or less, of a spokesperson at a presser. Perhaps they're all along to outsiders, non-locals. Hypothetically, the suspect might not know the girls, a complete stranger, but that's not likely in this case. Law enforcement with dark hair and glasses, no beard, older, shorter, usually speaks after FBI but before Doug Carter. So apparently this is a quote here. There's no link to this presser. I don't know which one this is. Wow, not the direction law enforcement had taken. Not necessarily serial. Could be some sort of revenge or hate crime. Or horrific snitches get stitches. As evidenced by what? The crime scene. A message. Not a crazy serial psychopath. And even if law enforcement doesn't seem to know for sure or won't confirm or deny if anyone really knows, but at the end of the day, we all hear the video released. Knee-jerk reaction was never drug-related in nature as a motive, but maybe never say never. It's not odd that no one saw anything, not as odd that no one heard anything. Why wasn't Libby's guardian there to pick her up by 3:14 p.m., not allowed to assist with a sketch drawing? ? Also, I'm not sure where they got this information from either. Did he see flannel shirt guy or an older male who resembled flannel shirt guy? Big difference. I mean, has it been stated how far away flannel shirt guy was? Did he run into his daughter's killer unknowingly? Or to this day just doesn't know for sure one way or the other? Does he believe he saw the man that was on the bridge? Or another person altogether, younger or older? How does law enforcement know a younger looking guy is the killer and that the guy on the bridge at least participated? Why can't law enforcement admit they're looking for two people if that's the case? Which likely rules out a serial killer, and then only maybe. Nothing would surprise me about this case. If indirectly drug-related and planned in any way, were Libby and Abby the intended targets or victims if the killer did not know their target? Was someone else to even be the victim unknown really? Except Libby and Abby had such low victimology for a homicide, especially if drug-related and or planned around such. Given their personal victimology, background, time, place, location, and presumed time frame of plus or minus 1 hour, no specifics about the crime scene other than bizarre or strange, serial killer seemed or appeared more likely, and again, could be northern and older. So a slightly older northern male with an old man's northern voice who may or could appear much younger than his biological age, we'll see. But does law enforcement see evidence of RICO-type activity with that voice? Learn something new every day if that turns out to be the case. Heck, people might be curious to know who helped with the second sketch, and why on earth did they attempt to make it look like MP, I don't know if they're talking about Mike Patty there, who has an alibi and related to Libby. That's a little weird. In hindsight, this person who helped police could be a little suspect. No question mark, inserting question mark. Good grief, in a town of barely 3,000, no one else can find the only other person who allegedly looks like Mike Patty but sounds like the guy in the audio recorded by Libby question mark. Thank God for Libby's audio. So some interesting thoughts and points there to keep in mind, especially when taking a step back and reviewing, because when you get tunnel vision on one particular suspect, it's if that turns out to not be the perpetrator of the crime, you're veering a little bit off course. So it's good to always take a step back and see what things look like. So let's get to the hitchhiker. So there was a report of some hitchhiker, apparently nothing really much since. So the best write-up I found on this topic was on truthtellersweb.wordpress.com. Opinions vary on this site, but either way, we will dissect this information for veracity. This was posted February 14th, 2020. 3 years later, no arrest in the murders of Libby and Abby. Was a mysterious hitchhiker the man we are all searching for? Just one day after the homicides of 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German, a local witness came forward with an account of passing a broken down vehicle and a man hitchhiking away from the area. The witness account allegedly resulted in a sketch of a young man who is now described by investigators as the man who killed the two teens. So now this earlier report here, I mean, this contradicts those that believe that the second younger sketch is based off of the Anthony Schatz profile, or possibly even Keegan Kline himself, unless Keegan Kline was this hitchhiker. I mean, what's going on here? Let's continue. On February 14th, 2017, the bodies of Abby and Libby were found by searchers along the Deer Creek on a stretch of private property in Delphi, Indiana. The two teens had been reported missing around 5:30 p.m. on February 13th when they failed to report to the trailhead to meet the family. The two had been dropped off around 1:30 p.m. and were to be picked up by around 3 p.m. by a family member. When calls to Libby's cell phone went unanswered, a search ensued. The girls' bodies were discovered around 12:15 p.m. on the 14th. It was later determined that Libby used her cell phone to videotape a man approaching the girls as they neared the south end of the Monon High Bridge. Audio from the video led investigators to believe that the man in the video did murder the teens. A suspect sketch was released in July 2017. Investigators stated that this sketch was compiled by multiple witnesses. It was then stated that investigators believed the suspect walked a great distance from the area. They asked if motorists witnessed a man placing a duffel bag along the side of Hoosier-Heartland Highway. It was asked if anyone in the areas of Kokomo or Logansport saw any unusual or suspicious activity. 2 years later, April 2019, investigators announced they were going in a new direction in the case based on new intelligence. A new sketch was released depicting a younger and more seemingly clean-cut man. It was then revealed that this sketch had been compiled by only one witness, only 3 days after the homicides. During the news conference, investigators spoke directly to the killer, stating that he likely didn't expect them to circle back. They asked for witnesses to come forward that may have seen an abandoned vehicle on the 13th between the hours of noon and 5 p.m. in the area of Hoosier-Heartland Express Highway near a closed CPS building. Investigators stated that the man depicted in the sketch may appear younger than his true age. Witness Jane Doe gave the following word-for-word account of a man she encountered on February 13, 2017, around 8 p.m. along the Hoosier-Heartland Express Highway. Let me repeat that time there. 8 p.m. 8 p.m. So here's the quote here. I wanted to say that I did already call in my tip a few days after it occurred, but wanted to ask you all to try to think back to the evening of February 13th. Were any other members possibly traveling on the new 25 northbound around 8 p.m. between Lafayette and Delphi? Please search your memory, as I think it might have some real significance. I wanted to share an eerie encounter I had that evening, but I will not share exact details as of now, as I would hate to have anyone just parroting what I saw, as this will not help the investigators to look into it harder. So let me tell you in very general terms of what I experienced. I work in West Lafayette and was on my way home around 8 p.m. on February 13th, traveling the new 25 northbound. First, I came across a possible work vehicle with its four-way flashers on, parked in the grassy median area. I say work vehicle because it has a possible logo which I reported to the best of my memory, along with the vehicle color and type, although I still can't say for sure even now what the make might have been. I slowed to make sure it was not an accident and did not see anyone with the stranded vehicle in question. About 2 miles farther up the road, I came across a man attempting to hitch a ride. At the time, I hadn't even heard about the girl's disappearance yet because I had been at work since mid-morning that day. I did pull over to the shoulder of the roadway, crack my window enough to talk to him, and had even turned on my dome light to see him better. Again, to keep this general, I will only say that he was Caucasian, between maybe 30 to 45 years old, possibly close to 6 foot, between 210 and 240 pounds. While I can say that the clothes were not the same as the police suspect picked, he was wearing a light jacket over the top of a lighter brownish tan hoodie. He told me his first name only and that he worked for his dad's business, had broken down, and was trying to get to his girlfriend's house in Delphi. I told him I couldn't give him a ride, but did offer to call someone for him or for a tow. He told me not to worry about it, as he had already let his dad know and that it was okay for him to continue to walk. The whole time, he never once made eye contact and had acted fidgety and extremely nervous. He also never even thanked me for stopping to check on him. To be honest, he gave me a very bad vibe that left me feeling quite shook. When I got home, I told my husband about the encounter, and neither of us felt the need to spend much more time discussing it that night, other than for him to scold me slightly for stopping in the dark for a stranger by myself. The next day, when I heard the teens were missing and that a search was underway, I instantly recalled the strange encounter and the really awful feeling it had given me. I wish I could remember clearer details, other than what I told the tip line, but it was dark, and like I said, I had no idea they might be so important later because a crime had been committed in the area. Anyone else maybe see something that might now prove to be useful or related to this case that night? I just figured it might be worth asking others to really try to think back to that night. Maybe something that seemed so unimportant at the time. So this is allegedly a quote from the individual that stopped and saw this guy. Now, is he really a hitchhiker? Because it's not clear whether he's trying to hitch a ride or not. He's walking away from an abandoned vehicle, possibly. And she stopped to check up on him, and it's unclear. She didn't release the exact details of whether he actually asked for a ride or not, but regardless, this is the alleged quote here. So the rest of the post here, the witness stated the man was traveling north on Hoosier Heartland Express Highway, also known as Highway 25. He stated he was hitching a ride into Delphi to the home of his girlfriend. Is this the local connection? It's also stated that this was a work vehicle with a logo. It's unknown where the business is located. However, it can be assumed that the business is fairly local. On the third anniversary of the Delphi homicides, I'm suggesting that we launch a renewed campaign to bring awareness to the search for a killer. If we all do our part, we can reach many more who are unaware of the case, or perhaps that we can reach that one person who has the information that would lead to an arrest. In this day and time, it takes little effort and no cost to email a flyer to various businesses, homeless shelters, trucking companies, officials of various cities and counties, etc. We must emphasize the $240,000 reward. The anonymous comment section is open below if anyone would like to share ideas. And apparently this is from, is this Facebook here, a Facebook post, and it also has the younger guy sketch here. So that's curious. That is very, very curious. And I mean, we do have to keep in mind a couple things here. One, law enforcement might have followed this lead, and if they did find this guy and somehow ruled him out, then it would appear he's not connected. However, if he truly is the source of the younger guy's sketch, which they're going with, what does that mean? Are they talking to this guy's girlfriend in the press conferences regarding the alibi that needs to be broken? The other thing is, has this Jane Doe been shown a picture of Keegan Kline as well as other individuals? Garrett Kurtz, all these other people, has she been shown photos of all these people? Some interesting comments here in response to this as well. I would like to point out that the highway going into Delphi from Lafayette on the new 25 northbound is a major 4-lane highway. The CPS building would be on the opposite side going outbound to Lafayette, and so these vehicles could not be connected as the one she saw was parked on the grassy median of the highway. New 25 northbound goes to 421, then straight into Delphi, or you could take 25 all the way to the east side or more rural part of Delphi, which is where the bridge and trails are. She didn't say which direction the vehicle was facing, only that it was in the grassy median She said 2 miles up the road, a man was hitchhiking. I would like to know where exactly she had this encounter. In regards to her account, I know Delphi is not a huge metroplex and that people are more helpful, but I would never stop for a man hitchhiking late alone after 8 at night when it's dark. So according to this, there would be 2 vehicles in question. So that a so-called abandoned vehicle by the CPS building might not be this vehicle, because that was apparently also earlier in the day. So this would be a completely different vehicle. And this is 8 p.m. at night. So Truth Tellers Web posted this. I would also like to know where exactly. I do believe investigators thought this man was Bridge Guy. I don't know for sure which sketch he is, but they were looking for a hitchhiker at one point. And in the last conference, they were looking for a broken down vehicle. It could be that law enforcement believes the vehicle is connected, and they know it was there at 8 p.m., but they need someone who can place it there between 12 and 5 p.m. in order to tie it to the crime. They have located the driver, but he claims he didn't break down until after 5 p.m. So supposedly, Truth Tellers Web here is stating that they did locate the driver. So was this alibi all accounted for? But the thing that doesn't make sense is, if this is the source of the young guy's sketch, why would it continue to be used if he was ruled out? And why is it so difficult for law enforcement to clarify all these things? I mean, that seems really weird too. Because why, if this guy was ruled out, I mean, every other case, you see things like this, okay, that was ruled out, this guy was cleared, whatever, whatever. Here, we have nothing. It's so weird. So a few more responses here, which just add to the confusion here. I don't think the two are related. I thought the second sketch of the young guy was by a dog walker who saw the guy waiting by his vehicle near the cemetery. That's when he said he was waiting for his dad. This was posted by Anonymous. There's basically 3 different stories here on where this young guy sketch came from. That's one. This driver and the hitchhiker is another. And then the third one is that it was made from the Anthony Shots account. I believe there might even be a fourth where it was someone on the trails that day who saw a younger guy. I'm not sure. So Truth Tellers Web response here is, the one thing I am positive of is that the story of the young man who was waiting on his dad by a broken down van or truck originated from this witness account. It's just twisted and changed over time as people retold it. The only reason I know this is because Rose Hip Grace shared this with me when it was first posted. I have hundreds of saved items and have been working my way through them. I had forgotten all about it. Back then, she told me the story of this witness who encountered the man who was hitchhiking away from the broken down vehicle. She sent me the screenshot. She told me it was a white work van and that the man's name was. Now, keep in mind, I do not know where her info came from. She never told me who told her this info, so I cannot say for sure that it was a white van or the name of the guy. But this is how, she gives the last name here, were brought into the mix very early on. I dismissed all of this back then because the witness described the man as being 35 to 40. So it cannot be Aaron, who was hitching a ride and waiting on his dad. I cannot say with 100% certainty that there wasn't another broken down vehicle with another young man in the area that day. The odds are against it. I cannot say it didn't happen. I'm not aware of anyone waiting by a vehicle by the cemetery. I'm guessing that originated from this witness account and had just been twisted over time. I mean, 2 vehicles could be broken down in an area. I mean, it's not like Delphi's the complete middle of nowhere. I mean, there's truckers coming and going. There's supposedly decent vehicle traffic, so I don't know. Another post from Truth Teller here. What does everyone think about this witness account? The witness saw a work vehicle. She at least gave law enforcement a good idea of the logo or company associated. It might be a van or a truck. The man said that he works for his dad. This may or may not be true. He said he was hitching a ride to see his girlfriend in Delphi. This may or may not be true. If he wanted to avoid anyone knowing his ID, then he may have misled her. Now, this was at 8 p.m. Can we believe that someone who was still that nearby at 8 p.m. would be the killer? Where was he from 3 to 8? Why was he over by the trail and bridge? And another point, too, again, I have to bring up the thermal imaging drone again. I mean, there's a lot of goofs out there that are hallucinating that I'm claiming that the bodies weren't there or that there couldn't have been a drone error or operator error. Of course there could have been. But by those accounts, the drone did not pick up any thermal signature from the area where the bodies were found. I went over the math before. You can go to sciencedirect.com, look at the algor mortis math. This is all empirically verifiable. If they were killed in the early afternoon with those outdoor temperatures, their heat signatures would have been picked up by a drone that was operating properly many hours after it was flown at dusk. Because, again, algor mortis, we're talking 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius per hour of cooling, and that doesn't even factor anywhere between a half an hour and a 3-hour delay before the cooling even starts. So unless one is to say they were submerged in the cold water for extended periods of time, then it's pretty much, unless you're saying that there was an error with the drone, then they weren't there. Of course, there were also the 2 a.m. screams heard. Again, we don't know. Also, screams would have been heard in the area. So based on all the available information, it seems like they were not killed at that time. That doesn't mean they weren't. That just means the circumstances lined up against all odds, basically, because everything points to them not being killed there at that time on the unseasonably warm day. But either way, that might open up more of a time frame if they were taken elsewhere, and if an individual or individuals who did take them were not the people responsible for killing them. So there's a lot of different variables here. This is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. We're not hallucinating that something is definitely true or untrue or falling in front of these logical fallacies like all of these so-called true crime aficionados do. So continuing on here, is this vehicle the same vehicle discussed in the news conference? Is he the sketch of the younger man? Question mark. The witness said he's 35 to 40, almost 6 feet, 210 to 240 pounds. No mention of hair or eye color. This description is a little different than the older sketch. How does this all fit together? Another interesting tidbit, there were police transcripts posted on Web Sleuth's forum, and there was a car at or near the cemetery that was picked up by a couple on the 14th. So was there also a car abandoned in the by the cemetery, or in the right next to the cemetery on the 13th? And a couple came back and picked it up on the 14th? And why is there no more information on this? So there's really not a lot of information on this young guy waiting on his father in or by the cemetery. On Delphi Murders subreddit, someone asked this 2 years ago. Can someone tell me if the young guy with the car trouble ever came forward and talked to the authorities? If not, is everyone in agreement that he is somehow involved? Responses: they wouldn't have ruled it out 100% unless they found out who the driver was. Anything is possible. User since deleted. I don't think we know for sure. Since the woman who encountered him called it into the tip line, I would assume law enforcement looked into it, but I don't think we know what happened after that. I believe most feel he is not involved, but I suppose if you suspect this was a father-son duo, then it's an intriguing aspect. Well, the other thing is, which father-son duo? The one by the cemetery or the one 2 miles up the road from the CPS building? Another post: this could be a red herring. We haven't heard anything definitive and supported by law enforcement. It would be an excellent thing to ask TL about if anyone gets the chance. His reaction would allow us to deduce the legitimacy of this concerning claim. It could very well have been an encounter with the killer himself. Now, from the IndieChannel.com, February 20th, 2017, saw somebody walking along road near Delphi. Police want to talk to you. And there's even a clip here. Police ask for information about hitchhikers and walkers. Again, this was posted February 20th, 2017. If you saw a hitchhiker or somebody walking along roads in Delphi last week, the police would like to talk to you. You could help find who killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Police are asking the public to try and remember if you saw somebody Monday, February 13th in the late afternoon or evening. We're asking people who are driving down the Hoosier Heartland that might have seen a hitchhiker or somebody walking. We're asking people that live in Logansport all the way to Lafayette if they saw somebody late that afternoon, that evening of Monday the 13th, if they saw somebody walking down the roadway that just did not look like they should be there, or they're just a hitchhiker. We would like to talk to that person, said Sergeant Kim Riley, Indiana State Police. So that's curious. They were definitely interested in this individual. So the curious question is, did they find the individual? Was it this and did they completely clear them? And why have they refused to say exactly where these sketches came from or who has or has not been cleared? I mean, it's kind of weird. Other than that one line about most of the family has been cleared, which is also cryptic because that means not all of the family. They haven't really said any of that. There's just a lot of confusion all around here. I mean, another post by user since deleted. No one has a clue about what law enforcement knows about the day of the murders. Shortly after the murders, many were questioned and several search warrants were issued. Police may well know who this individual is and have cleared him. Police have been very tight-lipped about the case throughout. My guess is that both sketches are valid and depict individuals who were seen in Delphi during the murders. The first one probably led to a dead end, hence the change of direction in the investigation. According to the timeline, witnesses of Bridge Guy are unsatisfied with both sketches, even though none of them got a good look of Bridge Guy. Police must know something we don't to still claim the case isn't cold. For all we know, Bridge Guy might not even be the murderer. The very short time frame of the murders, in my opinion, favors two perpetrators. I am dying to read the crime scene details when the killer is caught. And that's, of course, if the time frame really was that short, because it might not have been. Again, earlier rumors were that they were killed elsewhere and then possibly brought back, and that one of them might have still been alive. So, and then, of course, the screams heard at 2 a.m. So, again, very, very few details are confirmed, if any at all. I mean, it's just definitely a mind-shocking case. I mean, what can you say? Definitely absolutely mind-shocking. And in the previous episode, I actually believe the issue was solved with the first sketch in terms of people who had talked to the witnesses, or at least one of the witnesses who gave information regarding the sketch, and the law enforcement altered the sketch from what the witness originally stated. And we went over that in the previous episode. Here's another interesting article here. Carroll County Comet, April 29th, 2020. Lots of tips, no arrest in 2017 double homicide by Debbie Lau. Carroll County Sheriff Toby Leesenby told the Comet Monday roughly 40,000 tips have been received in an investigation into the homicides of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, February 13, 2017. Leesenby reported that roughly 9,000 tips received in 2019 and approximately 3,000 have been received this year. Libby took a video on her cell phone of someone walking on the bridge, which is believed to be the perpetrator or one of the perpetrators of the crimes. Interesting phrasing in this article here. Community members and others across the nation have become interested in the investigation to find the murderer or murderers, and theories run rampant on social media. Leesenby advised there is DNA from the crime scene, but refused to divulge from where it originated. He said there is suggestive evidence of fingerprints found at the crime scene. So is Leesenby admitting here that there is DNA evidence and fingerprints? That's curious. That's quite curious. This is not simple, the sheriff said. This is not television. DNA can come from all sorts of places, and fingerprints can be smudged and hard to identify. Leesenby said, from the evidence found in the area, the victims were killed on the same property on which their bodies were found along near the Monon High Bridge and the Deer Creek on February 14th, 2017. Now, what does that mean? They were killed on the property where they were found, but at what time? He said the Deer Creek runs east and west, and the High Bridge Trail runs north and south. The bodies of the girls were found north of the creek and east of the trail. Leesenby stated the investigation is not stalled, and it has not been determined if there was one or more perpetrators. We go back and forth on that, he said. Wow, interesting. So here is Toby Leesenby admitting that they don't even, not only do they not know whether there's one or more perpetrators, they go back and forth between thinking there's only one and thinking there's more than one. Does that sound like these guys have the cases solved? I don't know. The sheriff speculated that a perpetrator had probably been interviewed by investigators about the crime, but was not immediately recognized as an offender. He said he still believes a local or locals committed the crime. Leesenby said whoever did this knew the lay of the land. He said when an arrest is made, which he believes will happen, community members will likely be shocked at the identity of those arrested. He said he believes the perpetrator will likely be someone who is fairly well known in the community. Let me repeat that again. The perpetrator will likely be someone who is fairly well known in the community. Why is the sheriff making this statement? So he doesn't know if there's one or more involved, and he goes back and forth between thinking there's one or more, but he's stating that he believes that this is someone very well known in the community. That's a weird thing to say, isn't it? Mistakes may have been made early on in the rush to get a resolution to this, Leesenby said. It could be that just the right question was not asked, or a nerve was not touched by a question to help us figure out who did this. The sheriff said evidence is being revisited to determine if there are any more leads than were first thought. Criticism has been leveled against Leesenby because the search was called off Monday night and the girls had not been found. This is a Carroll County investigation, Leesenby stated. The investigatory team made the decision to stop searching on Monday night, but that doesn't mean everyone stopped searching. There were volunteers out all night continuing to look for the girls. And apparently it wasn't all night. There were certain dark hours. So there was 1 or 2 hours where apparently there was nobody out, but who knows. The sheriff indicated the two sketches, which varied greatly from each other, were supplied by two different people near the scene Monday, February 13th. Both images are of persons of interest in the investigation. Leesenby said further information and facts about the case have not been released because investigators believe that by doing that, the case against the accused would become weaker. That's kind of weird, though. How does that involve clearing some guy who's a hitchhiker that has nothing to do with anything? Leesenby said polygraphs have been administered on someone who has been interviewed. However, no information about the polygraphs or who is being polygraphed is being released because investigators want to protect the integrity of the information collected for prosecution. This is all kind of BS, though, because in many cases they admitted who got polygraphed. Obviously they don't have to admit the results of the polygraph, but in many different cases they stated, oh yeah, this guy was polygraphed, this guy was polygraphed. They simply don't reveal what was. Sometimes they do, or they say they failed, but of course that doesn't mean anything either. But it's just kind of weird. The sheriff acknowledged some who have called the local tip line have been unsatisfied with the reception they received. He encouraged those with possible information about the murders to email their tip to Abby and Libby Tip at cacoshrf.com or contact the Federal Bureau of Investigation tip line at Delphi Homicide Tip Line 844-459-5786. If people have not heard information from an investigator or released by police, they can assume the information is not true, Leesenby concluded. Wow, what nonsense. They don't say one way or another about anything. That's kind of a weird thing to say. But here's the takeaway here, though. Not only, Leesenby is stating they go back and forth on whether they think it's one or more, but for whatever reason, he believes it's a prominent member, someone fairly well known. Why would he believe that? Isn't that kind of weird? What makes them think that versus some lowlife living by himself whom people don't know? Is that a weird thing to say, and why would he say it? I mean, if they know who did it and it is a prominent member, why would he admit that? I mean, it's kind of weird no matter which way you look at it. So actually, I was able to track down this screenshot allegedly from the woman who reported the hitchhiker. Here's the woman's answer to what happened after her tip. It was me who had encountered this guy. I tipped it in and had 2 ISP officers and 2 FBI agents who followed up and met with me the day after I put in my tip. The guy was eventually identified as an RSO who resided in Delphi with his girlfriend. Based on my description of the logos on the side of the work van, they were able to identify the home business construction company that his father owned. I was also told that he was one of the many people investigated whose original alibi did not hold up because he had lied to investigators about his whereabouts that day. He had tried offering up gas receipts to attempt to prove he had been working on a job for his dad in Illinois, so it could not possibly be him that I encountered that night. It turned out those gas receipts belonged to the girlfriend who worked 3 days a week as a real estate agent in Illinois. From what I was told, they later were able to figure out where he actually was and confirmed that it was him I saw that night. They simply told me he had lied because he had not wanted his father to fire him for not being on the job that day, as his dad thought he was, and had taken the day off instead. But they assured me he was never near the bridge that day at all because they were able to figure out and track his movements from that day. So I was told by investigators that he was not Bridge Guy and nothing to do with the crime, but thanked me for coming forward. So again, I don't know if this has been corroborated that this was actually a comment from this particular witness. But if this is the source of the young guy sketch, why is it still being used? Huh. And again, if we can't verify any of this information and law enforcement refuses to verify the information, I mean, there's really nothing that can be made of this. Some more interesting posts from the Delphi Murder subreddit. If Bridge Guy knew of the girls going to the bridge, he would see them drive past his parked vehicle at the CPS building as they arrived from the other side of town. While he was waiting there, he may have been asked if he had engine trouble by the potential witness before he had donned his disguise. That would be my take. Exactly. If the Snapchat rumor is true, he didn't even need to see them from the vehicle. He would have been cyber stalking them from the parking lot waiting for confirmation. Or maybe he set it all up and they were there because he asked to meet them there. It's a rabbit hole. Keep in mind, these posts were also from 3 years ago, before the Anthony Schatz and Keegan Kline information became public. And that again just goes to show how some of these early rumors turn out to be true, because a lot of coincidence theorists, authority worshipping cultists, law enforcement apologists, they always try to shut down any rumors by saying they're all false. But look how many cases where there's some kind of truth in the rumors. Other poster mentioned this. This story rumor was circulated long before the sketch was switched to the younger man, and so it could possibly be true. It has come from the locals and not the police, as I understand it. This is referring to the Hitch Hiker. Another post here. The release of a second sketch wasn't particularly surprising to me, given that the other encountered was oft rumored. The timing is the annoying aspect, and that they heard that tip first and chose to disregard it. As I've mentioned many times, I'm convinced the video was the culprit. Or let's say the interpretation of that video. They didn't say they were seeing a young guy in the video, so they shelved the initial tip and waited around until they had an account of an older, menacing-looking, unkempt guy. That's what we want our killer to look like, hot off the presses. Huh, that is interesting. So this would have been a white truck. Some more interesting posts here, which are curious because the witness didn't say exactly what was said between the two of them. But here's the post. I thought there was a broken down vehicle and guy spotted. Reading it again, I see the lady says she saw the guy walking, but she doesn't mention seeing the car. The guy she saw is the one that mentions the car being broken down. Was there actually a car broken down on the road? I would like to know more about the time of the encounter. Was it close enough to the trail area that the person could have been walking back to where he parked his vehicle? So that's an interesting point, because was it not the guy's truck? Because if it was a guy who the truck did not belong to, he was simply walking away from the truck. Is it possible the truck isn't his? Although from the unless the follow-up account is not genuine, because again, we don't have corroboration on anything right now. So if the follow-up's not genuine and they didn't definitively identify this guy, is this guy not the owner of the broken down vehicle, and this was an assumption made? I mean, see, the case is unsolved. So if there were certain assumptions made, and this house of cards built on assumptions, I mean, we could be getting wildly off track here. So to nobody's surprise, like, nailing down these details is very tough. So if anybody knows also, what's with the rumor regarding the guy waiting for his dad in the cemetery? Did those get conflated? Was there a separate vehicle in the cemetery that a couple came to pick up the following day that's just not related to anything? And those stories got mixed up? I mean, as always, I mean, this is a confounding case. It should definitely have been solved by now already. And a lot of times going back to the beginning and re-examining certain things is key. And again, in so many cases, you see how early rumors turned out to be true. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of Mindshock True Crime. Found it interesting and informative. You can help support the podcast by donating to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share the podcast. Keep the awareness up in this case as well as other cases. That's how cases get solved. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, not suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.